Screenplay Nominee podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar in the writing categories. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and today we have Jack Mahanes. Welcome to the show, Jack. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Matthew.
Yeah, great to have you on. We were actually, right before we recorded, we talked for about like 15, 20 minutes about Oscar stuff, what we catching up on, talking about some of the races, especially some lead actress previous winners that we'll talk more about with said movie. I do want to warn our audience real quick, if anyone could hear any of the like buzzing in the background on my end. I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to hear any of it. It's we're now starting up with a bit of summer weather. It's like a bit hot outside, so I have the AC running right now. So yeah, because that was something I learned the hard way when I did like my second episode, and I was like, wait, hold on, I was supposed to have the AC on, and I had it off, and then we had to do like a whole change up, and then I had it on for the next take. But anyways, so going back to our guest here, Jack. Before we dive into our episode for the film you've chosen today, I have a couple of questions I would like to ask you or interrogate you on. How would you rank Chastain's? No, I'm kidding. We'll get to her in a minute. Would you care to explain to our audience what exactly it is you do for a living, or if you've been on any other podcasts or any sites you've been working for?
Absolutely. So I work full-time at BMI, Broadcast Music Incorporated, where I'm a licensing sales rep, which is whenever a business brings music into their establishment, whether it be live music, karaoke, DJ, or just music playing in the background, they have to obtain copyright permission. And, some people who, have background music have like commercial music subscriptions that are licensed through us, so they're exempt. But if they bring anything else like live music, karaoke, DJs into their establishment, the business needs copyright permission. So I make between like 70 to 100 calls a day with leads that are provided for me, and that's my job, and it is fun. I know it kind of sounds intense, but it can be really, really fun. And then I'm also a musician. That's kind of, the career path I have kind of been pursuing since I was 9, and I'm 26 now. But film has been a major hobby passion of mine for 10 years. I watched my first Oscar ceremony the year 12 Years a Slave won Best Picture. And the main reason I did was because I was a little bit late to the party, but I saw Gravity in theaters in January of that year. The nominations had just come out, and I saw it and I loved it. And I was like, you know what? I may watch the Oscars this year. I hope it wins everything. And again, keep in mind, that's me not knowing anything about, the Oscars or really much about like cinema. Gravity is still a great film. It probably would have still been my choice to win Best Picture personally. But 12 Years a Slave is still a great winner. So it's not a win I begrudge by any means. But yeah, ever since then, I've been following Oscar season passionately. I've been, making sure I see everything at least above the line before watching the Oscars. And yeah, it's been a passion of mine ever since my first ceremony 10 years ago.
Real quick though, for your full-time job, do you also work on weekends as well, or is that your only time
No.
you have off? Okay, all right.
No. It is a set 9 to 5 job.
Okay.
Monday through Friday. We're closed on weekends. During the summertime, actually, we changed the hours from 8:30 to 5, but then on Fridays, you get off at 1 to sort of enjoy this. They say they want our employees to sort of enjoy the summer while it lasts.
Nice. Yeah, I think I might have mentioned this on the show already, but we also talked about this off air, that the year 12 Years a Slave One Picture was the year I watched the televised show. I actually did see Gravity in that October in 3D, and I thought, oh my god, this is a great movie. It's fantastic. I hope it's going to win the Oscar. The moment, it was like a month later, I finally saw 12 Years a Slave in theaters, and it was like the day before my mom and my stepdad got married. It was like maybe around Veterans Day weekend, I think it was. And the moment I saw 12 Years a Slave and I came out of it, I immediately was just like sobbing from tears, just what I had witnessed and what I saw. And when my mom and my brother were picking me up at the theater because I went by myself, I immediately told Nathan, my brother, I said to him, I know you love Gravity and you wanted to win picture, but I'm sorry, 12 Years a Slave is going to win Best Picture at the Oscars, and it's the only thing that should win. And he was a bit disappointed until he saw it on DVD. He and the rest of the family saw it on DVD, and by the end, they were like, "Yeah, I'm glad I saw it once, and yeah, that was worthy of the picture win." And I'm like, yeah, I told you. Like when I'm right, I'm right. But there have been cases where I've said like, oh yeah, oh yeah, Bradley Cooper's totally gonna win for Maestro. It's like, yeah, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
um,
And I got around 12 Years a Slave around I think early May is when I finally got around to seeing it.
mhm,
But yeah, it was a great picture, and I don't begrudge its win at all.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting year that I would love to cover somewhere down the road. I actually think I there's a film or two nominated for lone screenplay for as a lone screenplay nominee. I might get to, and I might be able to talk a little bit about that year. But anyways, so moving on from that, the next question I want to ask is: it's always tough to ask someone, you know, what their favorite film is, so to speak. So I might as well ask what is a genre of yours that you love to explore or watch?
Well, first I'll answer that first question. What's your favorite film? Because that's easy for me. It's Pulp Fiction.
Oh, okay.
And I think for me, the way I would describe the movies I sort of gravitate towards, I like many different genres of film, but like what I enjoy the most is American mainstream semi action driven. And what I mean by that is like I'm not talking about like like jumping from one car to another, shooting guns in the air, like nothing like that. But films like some of my favorite films of all time are like Pulp Fiction, Goodfellas, The Silence of the Lambs, Fargo, Zero Dark 30, like films like that. And so that's how it's sort of categorized. The what I usually favor.
Hmm.
So yeah,
So,
like yeah, films. So I like Tarantino,
mhm.
Scorsese, the Coen Brothers. I love a lot of Steven Spielberg's movies. So that's usually like what I gravitate towards.
Yeah, and I think you also mentioned too when we were talking about this past Oscars year that who was it? Nolan was one of your favorite filmmakers. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and I didn't want him to win this year for any like it's his time thing. I really believe what he achieved with Oppenheimer was so extraordinary. That was like this is a great time to give it to him now.
Yeah. I still can't believe he finally won the Oscar. I know we're like a month away removed. It's old news, but at the same time I'm like, I can't believe that motherfucker finally got it. And like I didn't expect it. I really thought I honest to God thought he would be like another Hitchcock or a Sidney Lumet where it's like he keeps getting nominations, but he's never getting that gold. And I'm like, good for you, man. You were able
I
to
mean,
do it.
that's why I always say, like, we have no idea what someone is going to come out with, whether it be, a director or an actor. I mean, and there are plenty of examples where you can look back as like, wait a minute, looking back, I would have never guessed that that person would be getting an Oscar, or that person would finally win. Um, but it happens. It's why it's like, it's like don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah. Unless you're Peter O'Toole.
Unless you're Peter O'Toole, who does get to rest in peace with an honorary Oscar.
Yeah, that was nice of him to do that. Same with like Robert Altman and didn't Sidney Lumet win an honorary Oscar?
I don't remember.
I'll look it up after the show. I could be mistaken, but anywho, uh, so yeah, I think we got a good fair amount of good answers, and good on you for sticking to the guest and saying, you know what, I'm gonna also even though I'm gonna go with my favorite genre, I'll also give you my favorite film.
Mm-hmm.
So good on you. Yeah, I don't think I've had anyone else do that before. So, anyways, so today we're here to discuss Molly's Game, which was a 2017 biopic drama. This won't be a beat by beat bulletin presentation like you hear on other channels, but we will be discussing major spoilers for our discussion. If you haven't seen the film yet and want to hear our full thoughts on it, watch the film first and then come back to hear us talk about it. As of recording, we're recording this April 14th. I just want to let our audience know that it's currently playing on Netflix, I believe. Last time I checked, I'm pretty sure that's how you watched it as well, right? Through
Uh,
Netflix.
I actually watched it on Xfinity. I had
Okay.
it. Yeah, I rented it for
Oh,
just
okay.
$3.99. It wasn't anything like anything terrible.
Yeah, like Towering Inferno is like only available to rent or buy for like $15 on Amazon. It's like, come on, I want to. Could someone give me like a cheap copy that I could rent? Like, I'm willing to pay the $4, but not that much. But anyways,
Yeah.
so on to our film. I'll give behind the scenes details, and then we'll get into our thing. Academy Award winning screenwriter Aaron Sorkin had long established himself as a Hollywood writer, both for television and on film, in works like A Few Good Men, The West Wing, and The Social Network, which finally garnered him his first Academy Award win.
Yeah.
Producer Mark Gordon. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say Steve Jobs too. He wrote the screenplay for Steve Jobs.
Yep, he wrote the screenplay for Steve Jobs. He did not get nominated for that, which that's another year I really want to go down the rabbit hole of like what happened with that movie altogether. Anyways, so producer Mark Gordon bought the rights, the film adaptation rights to Molly Bloom's memoir Molly's Game, and hired Aaron to adapt the book. Originally, he had no intentions of directing the film himself until Mark Gordon and Amy Pascal took him to take this on as a directorial debut. And the two big reasons why Aaron Sorkin decided to give in to directing this one. The first thing was Aaron wanted to put the ritzy world involving glitz, glamour, drugs, and sex within the background of the film, and tell a personal, complicated, and emotional story of the film. There was because there was already I guess he had been kind of sick and tired of seeing that, like, the glitz, glamour, drugs, and sex, especially with like Martin Scorsese films, which are most of them are, if not all of them, are great when they do that. But I guess for Aaron, it's just not the story that he wanted to tell personally. And the second thing was he wanted to ensure that the real life people involved in the story were protected and they weren't dished out through gossip within the film. Uh, so that were his two reasons. As far as the casting goes, Jessica Chastain was offered the lead role by Aaron himself, and shortly after, Idris Elba was hired to play Molly's lawyer alongside other actors like Michael Cera, Bill Camp, Jeremy Strong, Graham Greene, Chris O'Dowd, and Kevin Costner. Uh, Due to scheduling issue or scheduling, what do you call it?
Conflicts.
Scheduling conflicts. There we go. Due to scheduling conflicts, Idris and Jessica only had 10 days to shoot their scenes together and managed to shoot about 45 pages within the first 6 days of shooting together while spending time offset or in between takes rehearsing their lines. All the extras in the card scenes were played by professional players, and that's a tongue twister, and they were usually paid about $90 for a 12-hour workday, and they ended up being the highest paid people on set, which is shocking. Uh, I guess they had to do a lot of scenes involving poker or film scenes of poker. Principal photography on Molly's Game started on November 9th, 2016 in Toronto and ended on February 9th, 2017. The film started its festival run at the Toronto International Film Festival, or as Jack and I know it as TIFF, on September 8th, 2017. And it also showed up at the AFI Fest on November 12th, 2017. It finally got a limited theatrical run starting on Christmas Day that same year and expanded nationwide on January 5th, 2018. Despite doing well critically, the film only made roughly $53 million on a production budget of $30 million worldwide. And outside of the lone writing nomination in the adapted screenplay category it got, Molly's Game received adapted screenplay nominations from BAFTA, Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes, the University of Southern California Scripter Awards, and the WGA. For her performance, Jessica Chastain herself only got nominations from the Critics' Choice Award and Golden Globe in the drama category, but no nominations from SAG or BAFTA. And despite I'm looking through. Oh, oops, I'm jumping around. The film itself also received a PGA nod and American Cinema Editors Eddie Dramatic nomination for editing, and a DGA first time nod as well. Despite not winning the Oscar for the Adapted Screenplay Award, Aaron Sorkin went on to direct at least 2 more films in his career, The Trial of the Chicago 7 and Being the Ricardos. Both films went on to get nominated for various awards, including a PGA nod for both, and Chicago 7 even got nominated for Best Picture. As far as what the logline is of the film, it's essentially the true story of Molly Bloom, an Olympic class skier who ran the world's most exclusive high stakes poker game and became an FBI target. So that is essentially the background and plot synopsis of the show, so to speak, or the plot synopsis of the movie, I should say. I wanted to ask you. I assume this is not your first time you had seen Molly's Game. But I am curious what made you want to pick this one outside of the big obvious that we'll get to in a minute.
So the main reason I picked this film was because one, I'm one of the biggest Jessica Chastain fans ever. She's one of my personal favorite actors, non-gender specific, working today. And yes, this is not the first time I've seen this movie, but it's the first time I've seen this movie since I saw it in theaters in early 2018. And so there was a lot that I did not remember, and it was definitely interesting to go back and rewatch it and just like, oh wow, it's been so long, I did not remember that part of the movie. And I think that when I became a big Jessica Chastain fan, it was a few years after I saw this movie because I've always liked her, but I didn't become like a huge oh, she's one of my personal favorites working today until I saw Zero Dark 30 in early 2021. That's what made me a full-fledged fan. Um, and so when you reached out to me if I wanted to do this, there was one film. I'm not going to say what it was, but there was one film. I was like, oh, I can recite that film, having seen it so many times. And you said that's Taken, and so I want to give you a quick response before more things kind of were going to be taken. So I just looked. I did a quick scroll, and I was just like, you know what? It would be fun to go back and watch Molly's Game, given that I'm a bigger Jessica Chastain fan now than I was compared to early 2018.
Yeah, I had so I'd seen the movie back in 2018 when I saw it in theaters. I'd actually we were I remember specifically we were going to go see uh Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. So it was myself, my brother, my mom, and my stepmom. We all tried going various times, but we couldn't because it was too packed and there weren't enough seats for us to like sit in. And we tried this like 3 times altogether. And I think this was like the first attempt we tried going to see Jumanji. And I thought, wait, Molly's Game's playing in like 20 minutes or 10 minutes. So why don't we go to see that instead? And so we all agreed and we're like, all right, fine, we'll go see it. And yeah, everyone enjoyed the movie. I certainly did too. I definitely put it in a much higher regard for the film itself. As far as Jessica Chastain, because I told Jack last night I was like I'm gonna be very coy with how I'm gonna talk about her. I actually I don't love her as much as you do, but I think she is a solid actress for the most part. And I do think that outside of her film that came out a couple years ago that may or may not have won awards, I think there is actually another performance that she's done is worse than that, which for me is Dark Phoenix. Although then again, no one was really giving a shit about that film. Period. They were just like, yeah, whatever. It's just
Never
another
went to
like,
see.
yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say never went to see that one. I
Yeah,
saw the
it's
reviews and I was like, I'm not gonna waste my money on it.
uh,
Well, actually, I shouldn't say not waste my money because I was working in a movie theater when that movie came out. But I was not gonna waste one of my twice a week passes on that, I should say.
yeah. It was. I'm glad you didn't because it was a waste of time, and you could clearly tell, even though this is a directorial debut from someone who actually had been a part of the series for a fair amount. It's like it seems like you really don't give a shit, and I wonder if part of that's because of the Disney Fox merger that's going on in the middle of production that you're like, yeah, whatever, who gives a shit. But yeah, as far as Chastain goes, I always considered her to be a really solid actress. I liked her in The Help. I think Lawless was actually one of her first films I'd seen her in, along with The Help. I did enjoy her in Zero Dark 30, although it took a while till I finally saw it because I wasn't I wasn't into overtly into these like Oscar nominated stuff until um down the road. So there was that. Is there? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So it's thundering outside. Anyways. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't dislodge the connection. So anywho. Uh. Where was I? So yeah. I like I said, I like Chastain overall. I think she's a wonderful actress. I'll say this for the film. I think it is a solid directorial debut for someone like Sorkin. I do I because it'd been so long since I seen the movie, and when I finally saw Chicago 7 and Being the Ricardos, I remember there was a lot of like vitriolic hate for him as a director, and I was like, yeah, they're not really great movies, but I remember enjoying Molly's Game back when I saw it. There are things about this film on a rewatch that I think hold up pretty well as a director, but there's also things that I'm like, okay, I could definitely see why people were not on board with him as a director in the first place. Much like how I am not infamously a fan of Alex Garland when he did his first debut film with Ex Machina, and apparently everyone is calling it a masterpiece, and I'm in like the minority of it. But but there were things, and I think the biggest thing about the movie that I noticed this time around was its bloated runtime of it being 140 minutes long, and the fact that the that Aaron Sorkin is sort of self-indulgent in his dialogue writing. I mean, even someone like Tarantino, as we mentioned, and Nolan, like you consider him to be, them to be one of your favorite filmmakers out there, but I'm curious and wondering, like, do you also agree with uh that feeling of like Tarantino and Nolan, Sorkin kind of does be a bit more self-indulgent with his writing with this one, or are you very much like, oh no, like the writing is like really solid?
I think the writing is solid for this movie. I think that the writing is, I think, the main thing that why this movie works. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think this movie is a masterpiece. Like I'm not like over the moon. Like, oh my god, Molly's Game is like this really really excellent film. It's a very good 8 out of 10 movie for me.
Okay.
But I think that there were a lot of details that I think were so cool that I didn't pick up on the first time I watched it. But I think becoming even more familiar with Aaron Sorkin's work over the years, and I see what he did with this, it was definitely, it's definitely, a very, very strong script. And that combined with, good editing and, very strong performances from both Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba. And pretty much the cast is solid. Like there's no one in the cast who's like, stands out as like, oh, they were bad.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it just kind of it's a very well done, entertaining film. It's just not like I'm not like over the moon about the movie.
Interesting. So what were some things for you on a rewatch that you didn't notice the first time around?
I think one of the main things that I noticed that I thought was very cool was the jumping back and forth between the present and the flashbacks. And it was one of the things I observed was that the flashbacks are when Molly Bloom narrates the movie, because she doesn't really narrate in the present until the very end of the film. And then again, they do the flashback of her skiing accident that happens towards the beginning of the movie. But I think one of the parts that was really cool about this movie that I didn't pick up on last time that I watched this was that they go back and forth between what she's describing and then back to her. Like
Mm-hmm.
when she's like discussing poker terms, it's like this poker term, and then cuts back to her. This poker term back to her, and I think that it could have gotten very messy. Let's just say if like Baz Luhrmann made this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm not a Baz hater, but I'm just saying that like this is this is much more precise, fast editing than Baz Luhrmann usually, what Baz Luhrmann's movies are usually like. But
But
I think that was very cool. I think it definitely told a really cool story. And I think that it also had a little bit. It's not nearly. Now this is a movie I absolutely love, but it did kind of have a Wolf of Wall Street vibe to it that I
yeah,
enjoyed.
yeah, it definitely does. That is interesting. Yeah, you bring up the narration only comes in when she's in the flashbacks, because it does explain, especially when she's trying to explain not just to her audience, but even to a certain degree to her lawyer, played by Idris Elba. I'm blanking on the character's name, Charlie, who's the her attorney, and trying to explain all this stuff in terms of like what happened to the day by day events. The other way you can kind of interpret it is her narrating those sections of her life, which I believe came straight from the book. And I know that I think I could be mistaken, but I think the lawyer stuff that takes place after with like Idris Elba and the stuff that goes on with the court stuff in the present day, I'm pretty sure that was created just for the movie, because by the time the book came out, that's that element of the court stuff didn't really come into play, and I'm pretty sure she didn't even go to court until like a couple years after the book was released. I could be wrong, but it's an interesting mechanic that Aaron Sorkin uses as a writer, and yeah, it's a well crafted enough script. Even though, as I said before, it does indulge a little bit into what Sorkin loves doing with like expositional dialogue, very snappy lines, and especially the kind of lines where it's like, okay, now you're starting to be the kind of lines where it's like it's a bit too much for some, and I could see why someone were to tell me like, yeah, this is too much Aaron Sorkin for me. And in fact, I've actually had buddies who are not even the biggest fan of Sorkin films, even his so-called masterpiece or best of work like Social Network. They're like, yeah, it doesn't really do it for me. So I could definitely see that being an issue for some with this movie. I did want to jump into, unless you had another comment you wanted to make about the writing.
I was gonna say, but yeah, it does have his signature touch where like the lines just kind of go like this,
Yeah,
and that's it, and that's and I think that if you watch like Steve Jobs,
yeah,
and you watch this, it's very very similar. It's like very very heavy dialogue set at a very very fast pace. I mean, not to where you can't understand what the characters are saying, but like they
yeah.
go like back and forth like really, really quickly. But that's just his, that's just his style. And I can understand if that doesn't work for people, but I do think, it works for an entertaining flick.
Mhm.
It works, to make the flick entertaining, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I did want to actually jump into the performances. What were your thoughts on were there any like standouts for you in terms of the acting, or the way that some of the actors delivered their lines, like any moments specifically from the film? Because there were a couple that I want to bring up, but I want to hear your thoughts first while I bring up the notes.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that as I mentioned earlier, everyone in the cast is good or great.
Hmm.
But one of the other things that I thought was kind of cool watching this movie before I get into into the performances one by one, it was very interesting. Because I wasn't a big TV series watcher back then. Some of the people who have more of who are more well known in TV, it was cool watching it back. It was like, oh my god, like I forgot that this person was in that movie, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But I do think Jessica Chastain is great in the movie, and I think it is the kind of performance that is kind of in her wheelhouse. It's not like to say like the performance that she won the Oscar for, where that was like a big like stretch outside of what the type of performances that she normally gives. This is a performance. It's another great entry in her body of work. It's one that's in her wheelhouse, but it's perfect casting choice, and I think that she really it's she her performance in general is what I think keeps you engaged watching it. Idris Elba, I think, is really the most substantial supporting character in the movie. And it's interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but it's interesting that Chastain and Elba presented at the Oscars in early 2015, and then they ended up going on to work together. So I think that was interesting. But yes, I think that their dynamic on
Wow.
screen was really, really great. And I think that Idris Elba, there's a scene when during a disposition hearing, and he gets like this big, like like emotional, powerful monologue. And
Hmm.
I think it definitely makes you walk away from the movie not just remembering Jessica Chastain, but also you also remember what Idris Elba did in the movie. Um, some of those people, other people that I kind of had forgotten were in the movie just because it had been so long. Michael Cera, and I think this is probably, and I don't mean this in a insulting way when I say this, but it's just how his other characters have been written for him. It was kind of interesting seeing him play a character that wasn't a complete dork. Like
I
like if you
yeah.
watch like Juno or Alan and Barbie, it's just this was definitely a character that was kind of different for him, but it was cool to watch. You were gonna say something?
Sorry. Yeah, no, the one thing I was gonna say though was this might be my favorite. Granted, I haven't seen much from Michael Cera, but this actually might be my favorite performance from him, period. Because I really like that he's able to bring that like douchebaggery to the role like really well and very confidently. And the one thing that I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but the sorry for the weather in the background, if anyone can hear it, but anyways, so I'll try to talk as loudly as possible. But I will admit the who was it? Yeah, so Michael Cera did a really great job, and it's I'm pretty sure like there's rumors or there's like possible theories that like player X could have been Toby Maguire. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, that's actually a pretty good impression, or at least a good impersonation of him, like in terms of like the kind of personality that he kind of gives off a little bit to me. The one line I did want to bring up that I thought was great. I mean, there's a couple of great moments with him, like when he's fooling the guy into folding the winning hand. That was a great scene in terms of like the writing and the execution of it. The other line I liked about it, I liked was when he said, "I don't like playing poker. I like destroying lives." And immediately,
Yes.
instantly the kind of character he is from a writing standpoint. Um, and even his little interaction between him and Jessica Chastain in the film is pretty good. Yeah, and the other actor I think I do want to bring him up now while we're at it. Were you thinking of the same actor I was thinking of from the TV, or he was in this movie, then he went on to doing TV, which was what was his name?
Joe
Keery?
Keery.
Joe
Joe
Keery,
Keery.
yeah. Because
That
the moment I saw him in the film, I'm like, holy shit, he's in this movie. Like I forgot.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that was like it was a jump scare, but not a bad jump scare but I
mhm,
was like, but I love Stranger Things, and my two favorite characters on the show are Steve, his character, and Dustin, played by Gaten Matarazzo. But yeah, when I saw his appearance, I was like, wait a minute, I forgot Joe Keery's in this? Like
yeah,
I did not remember, and I didn't remember his scenes at all. But it was a cool scene, and it was kind of like how Steve was in season one of Stranger Things, kind of like a spoiled, spoiled, rich kid. Well, I don't know if
yeah,
rich is the right word, but a kid that was kind of spoiled because of his
yeah,
parents.
yeah. It's a normal
So
shit.
yeah, and then someone else that I was going to bring up. Um, I mean, I remember his scenes, but I didn't remember the actor himself. But given that I binged the first two seasons of Succession during the pandemic, it was kind of cool looking back to see Jeremy Strong in this movie.
Yeah,
And I also there was one part where Jeremy Strong said "fuck off," and I was like, like it's so interesting hearing you say it this time instead of Brian Cox.
yeah, yeah. No, he's good in the movie too. Was this? Yeah, I think this came out like a year or two before Succession, right?
Close to a year because
Okay.
Succession came out around like the second half of 2018.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. No, he was good. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the other actor I want to bring up that I actually thought on this watch he did a better job than I remembered, Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
I'm not really the biggest fan of him as an actor. I think there are some roles that he could play really well. I think the biggest complaint I had, and I didn't realize this until I was rewatching Dance with Wolves with my brother, because I finally showed him the film like a year or two ago, is that so long as you put him in a role where he doesn't, have the like emotional core where you're supposed to care about him emotionally, or at least carry the emotional weight of some of these scenes, and if he's like a supporting character or if he's playing like a quiet loner or someone, or or maybe like a demeaning father, but he's in the background. He can do the job okay, or be pretty good at it. Like I hear Yellowstone. I haven't seen the show yet, but I hear Yellowstone he's fantastic in. And he does a great job with that kind of role. I'm actually kind of curious to see what his Horizon American Saga is going to be in terms of like what kind of role is he going to play in that. But rewatching Molly's Game, I'm like, that big scene that we see in the film, like towards the third act, where there's been somewhat of this buildup, but it hasn't really been established that well, I feel, which is kind of where Sorkin kind of lies as a director, where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe in a better hands of a director, this could have been much better, like, um, set up, into, so to speak. But I do like the scene overall where Costner and Chastain, they're giving, Costner's giving Chastain her like 3 years worth of therapy,
In three
and
minutes.
in 3 minutes. And it's a really nice scene, especially realizing like what her reasons are for like the attitude that she gave, and even the way that she, especially early on in the film, we see like a younger version of herself, uh saying like, I don't have any heroes there, I don't, or whatever it is, like, I don't have any goals. I gotta say though, I don't know what kind of research Chastain did, but watching the movie again, I wonder if she either looked up the actual person herself, Molly Bloom, or if she just relied on her accent, for the film, from the way the kid performed her scenes, because it's very fluid, like in terms of like the two performances, for me at least, where I was like, oh wow, it's actually able to. It almost seems like Chastain took some notes from this kid, or maybe it was vice versa. I don't know. But I'm looking through, the one line I did find was funny during the that scene. So, did you misunderstand what drive-through meant when she when the father mentions that she drove her car into a McDonald's? I thought that was a pretty funny line. And yeah, when the scene
Yeah.
was over, I was like, okay, yeah, Costner's actually pretty good in this, and I can't believe I'm saying that, because like I said, I'm kind of like mixed on him overall. It's like there's some roles he could do really
Yeah.
well, and there's some roles that it's like, God, man, I wish this film were, if you were giving a better performance, or you gave it to a better actor, this would have been a great movie. Like Dances with Wolves is one where it's like, on a rewatch, that film would have worked so much better if it was in the hands of a better actor. Like, his directing is great, is good in the film as it is, but yeah. Um. Anyway,
I'm
but
gonna
yeah,
ask
you're
something else. I'm
go
going to
ahead.
ask something else about Kevin Costner, and I agree with a lot of what you said. But I think the thing with Kevin is that Kevin Costner is that he's the actor where like he has to have a good script in order to shine. He's
Yeah.
not the type of actor that can save bad material. I like Kevin Costner. I'm not like a huge Kevin Costner fan, but like when he's good, he's good. But the former Good Morning America sort of film critic or Oscar commentator once said that Kevin Costner is the kind of actor that like it's best when he's like in a merry-go-round role where he's in the center and everything is happening around him. And yeah, and so that was and I think that's true. And I think that the thing with Dances with Wolves, I'm not gonna not the film we're talking about, so but I'm gonna say this quickly.
Yeah.
His performance is fine. It's just the cast of characters around him are way more entertaining than him. Say
Yeah.
Graham Greene or Mary McDonnell. Um,
Yeah, it's a much more interesting ensemble involved. And on paper that character is fine, but with how Costner plays it, it's not really something that I feel works entirely well with that film. But again, going back to Molly's Game though, I actually think he does a pretty good job here with that scene.
he does.
And yeah, and some of the actors I want to bring up, Chris O'Dowd's good. The other actor for me that was like, oh my god, I can't believe he's in this movie, Bill Camp, who was in, I think he was in The Queen's Gambit. He was
Wasn't it?
also in Joker as well, and 12 Years a Slave. And it was he was one of poker guys who goes in over his head, where there's like that big subplot where he's like, I'm gonna surprise my wife for her birthday party or whatever, and he ends up getting a divorce, which is a really good subplot and really interesting. Um, the other actor I want to bring up that I was like, oh wow, I forgot they were in it, was J.C. McKenzie. He plays one of uh, it was like the other attorneys on the attorneys for the state defense. And when he showed up, I was like, oh my God, I forgot he was in this, because I had seen him in stuff like Chicago 7, and he was recently in both Killers of the Flower Moon as the radio announcer at the end of that film. And he was also in American Fiction as well, playing one of the guys on the phone telling Monk about, hey, we want to hire more inclusion writers on board for our little, book review and such. Yeah, but no, it was interesting to see him go, be in this, and I was like, oh wow. Um, and then obviously, he's not in it much, but Graham Greene, it's always nice to see him show up in a film, especially in something like this, or Wind River, which was also another directorial debut that had occurred for Taylor Sheridan, I believe. So yeah, just a good ensemble overall. Were there any scenes? Because we're kind of jumping around here all over the place, but were there any other aspects of the film that you admired or appreciated from the film, or anything else that you caught up on with you realized on your second watch that you didn't notice the first time around?
I pretty much, you know, pretty much touched on everything. I will say that there was one line towards the beginning of the movie that I forgot about that I think is actually a pretty good line. It's actually the opening scene when like she says like they did a survey and they're like, what's the worst thing that could happen in sports? And like they said so many different things, and then one of them was finishing fourth place. And then when she's skiing and then she trips over that stick and one of the skis comes off and she injures her back again, which was already like really badly injured
Yeah.
before that ski jump. But then when she's on the ground and she said this line, I just burst out laughing. Whoever said fourth place was the worst thing to happen to you in sports, fuck you.
Yeah, that was good. I I remembered the audience wincing at that scene the moment especially when they introduced the whole back brace for her and how to do like spinal surgery on her, and then she does that flip, and it's like, oh, because it's like what's gonna happen, and I'm like, yeah, that's something I'm like. Even I was like, all right, that's pretty impressive. You did that.
But it
The
was
other
cool they circle. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, keep going.
But I was going to say it's interesting that they circled back around to that scene at the very end, and they showed that she just got up and walked.
Yeah, and that was the moment she decided, like, yeah, this is it for me. I'm going off to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, because God, I not that this is like too, hopefully it's not too late for this actor, but I would love to see Idris Elba do more dramas. Going back to him for a minute, because there were some acting moments he did. The monologue was really good, like when he's talking to defense attorney. It's like, this is why she's not, a good enough candidate to be in your like RICO charge case against these like Russian mobsters. The one like sort of quick acting bit he did, that was when she came back to the office after she had her conversation with her father, and he says, I finalized a deal. You're not gonna like it. And he walks over to his desk and says the line, I wrote it down here, and he puts on his glasses, and then without even like reading it with it, scrolling through it with his eyes, like going back and forth with it, he just looks at it plainly and then takes off his glasses after like a few seconds, realize it's not even worth telling her on the paper, just tell her straight up. And I really like that acting bit. I'm like, God, I wish he kept doing more good dramas, because it's like, the guy, he doesn't really do a whole lot of these like awards contender roles, and I'm sure he's fine with where he's at, hopefully. I But it would be nice to see him do like more of these like dramatic roles, because like, what was the last thing he did in like the past like 10 years, outside of being in like franchise movies like the Suicide Squad, the Sonic movies, Fast and Furious, Avengers. I'm looking through his filmography, like even Dark Tower was the same year as Molly's Game. and no one remembers that movie. So yeah, it's just I would like to see him just be I would like to see him do more dramatic roles or give him an opportunity to do more of these kind of roles. But again, if he's fine where he's at and he's okay with it, then good for him, you know. But it's just I don't know, it's just one of those like a what if scenario almost for me.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Um, I mean, sure. Like, I mean, I don't watch the Fast and Furious franchise. I have seen both the Sonic movies. I remember my mom laughed so hard when the first trailer dropped, and I told her, I was like, well, that's Idris Elba voicing Knuckles.
Yeah,
And she just thought it was just the funniest thing that like Idris Elba would take the time to voice Knuckles in the Sonic movies.
yeah. I
And
mean,
and
yeah.
now the Knuckles character is getting his own miniseries by Paramount.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I mean, I was gonna say he also did one of the Fast and Furious films, and it wasn't even the main one; it was a spin-off he did. So it's like, yeah, he'll do it. It's like, yeah, I already gave my soul to Satan a while ago when I did all these intellectual property films. So it's like, yeah, whatever. What's the harm in it? I don't know. I just he's probably getting paid a shit ton of money more than we are collectively. So what the hell do we have to judge him for? Again, if he's happy with what he's got and he's okay with the money, then cool. But like I said, it would be nice to see him do more dramatic roles like this every once in a while. The same way I always say to Hollywood, like, why aren't we hiring more of Jaimin Hun soon? Because he's such a good actor. Even in like Furious 7, it's like, God, he's so wasted in this. And there was a whole thing going on with that movie as a whole, but man, it would have been so great to see him being able to utilize his dramatic skills, because I know that guy can act. So anyhow,
Absolutely, no, and I agree with you, and he probably will at some point.
yeah,
He's just, he's probably enjoying what he has right now. I actually was thinking about this today. I mean, he did three voiceover roles in 2016
yeah.
because he was in Zootopia, he was in Finding Dory, and then he was Shere Khan in the Jungle Book, the live action Jungle Book remake. Which, by the way, that's the only live action remake I actually liked that I've seen.
I am not a fan of that movie. I really hate that film, even though it's like, I guess it's one of the better ones, but I don't know. Can we include like the Fox and 20th century stuff in to like, so that way by default we could just say like, I don't know, Poor Things is like a loose Frankenstein version, and it's like, there's their Disney live action remake, or Shape of Water, where it's like a live action retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Essentially, it's like, can we add those, because those are by default better movies.
Yeah,
But that's just me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I will say, even though it's a very, like, looking back, it was very much a like kind of cheesy moment in the moment with Chastain yelling at Elba's character Charlie, saying like, because it's my name, it's all I have. I did admittedly like the fact that Sorkin did at least sneak in the Crucible book early on, to where it's like, okay, so that's how it's tied back into the story. Um, and it is kind of there almost for like a trailer moment as well too.
I will say this: she
Yeah.
delivers it much better than how Daniel Day Lewis delivered that line in the movie at the end. Because look,
uh
Daniel Day Lewis is one of the greats. His performance was so fucking hammy in the
oh
Crucible,
man,
and the Crucible's not a good movie. It's a mess,
he couldn't
and
save it.
he couldn't save it. Winona wasn't very good. Joan Allen and Paul Scofield are like the bright lights, the shining moments of that movie. But that movie is a pacing mess. They tried to condense 5 hours worth of material into a 2 hour movie, and it
Mm.
just didn't work. And I was hoping given the cast of characters that I would at least somewhat like it, but I didn't. It was it wasn't good. And unfortunately, Daniel Day Lewis was one of the things that about that movie that was an issue for me.
I might still check it out down the road, because I think Train Spotting was nominated that year as a lone writing nod. But
Yes.
if I have the time, I'll get around to watching The Crucible anyways, because I've seen what English Patient and Sling Blade, and the only other film outside of those four is like Hamlet, which is like a 4 hour epic, and I'll find some way to watch that one. But
Oh, sure.
speaking of Speaking of pacing issues, did you notice in Molly's game some of the pacing issues in the film at any point?
Not really, to be honest. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I could it have been slightly less than 2 hours and 20 minutes? Yes. Did it
Yeah.
necessarily get boring at any point? No.
Hmm.
Um, but honestly, not really, to be honest.
Okay. Because I didn't notice until rewatching it. I'm like, once she goes into New York and does the whole poker, hosting gig, brushes shoulders with the Russian Jewish mafia or Russian Jewish people, I'm like, yeah, pacing's a bit slowing down. It's not really picking up as much as I want to. Yeah, but that was just me, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like though for a movie like this, they could have told it with like 2 hours, 2:10 maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes. Maybe if it were in better hands of a director, they could have just yeah, as Cooper to quote Cooper from my show, I'm reining it in, with the pacing and be like have another director say no enough of this. You gotta cut the scene out or simplify it down even more, Sorkin and but that's Sorkin as your director. One other scene I did want to bring up that I did like overall was the scene at the court hearing when, even though Charlie had stated to Molly that she would have to be on her own and she was only there as an advisor to her, and he kept switching with the bodyguard, being like, all right, switch over, and then and it's like and tells him all the information and such, and they bicker back and forth. They're like, okay, switch back, and I love that little action they have with the little interaction they have between each other. And it was like, okay, that's one of the better aspects of Sorkin's writing I do enjoy overall. Yeah, so while we're winding down a bit, any final thoughts you would like to say about the film, or anything else you have left to say on the table, so to speak?
Yes, I think I'm just gonna say that my opinion of the movie remained the same. Uh, Watching it, from when I watched it 6 years ago to just watching it again very recently, it's a very well made, very entertaining film. It's not outstanding, but I put it in the very good category because, like, 8 out of 10 is why I say very good. 9 is why I say great. 10 is where I say absolutely loved it. No criticisms. Would watch it anytime. And so yeah, no, it was good to see this again, and I glad I picked this one for this episode.
And so far, we have not once bickered about the film that may or may not have gotten awards. Of Chastain's career, that is. At least got her awards. Um, I don't know. Maybe that might change in the next couple minutes. We'll see. But no, joking aside, though, I did enjoy the film. I'm glad you did choose it. It was interesting to rewatch it. And the one other aspect I did want to bring up, for some reason at that time, especially now rewatching it, whenever I saw Jessica Chastain in as Molly, I always saw I don't know why, but I always get the feeling that she, the way Chastain was playing that role was like, oh my god, that's one of my best friends from from one of the retreats I went to, Samantha. And it's so funny just seeing not necessarily the way the mannerisms are, it's just the way her character is portrayed in general. I'm like, yeah, that is something I could imagine Samantha doing, in terms of the, within the story. Yeah, I just thought that was like, like, and even when Chastain did win her so-called Oscar for the Eyes of Tammy Faye, I did mention to my friend Samantha, I said, hey, your twin finally won an Oscar. So I thought that was pretty funny. And every time I was like, hey, yeah, your twin's got a pretty good chance at winning this, or all this stuff. So that was cool.
Just gonna say to people listening, what Matthew's referring to is that I actually really wanted Chastain to win that year because I genuinely thought she gave the best performance in the category. And I think you can say what you want about the film. My opinion on the film, I've actually watched it twice because I watched it for the first time over the holidays that year. And then I watched it again. I actually showed it to a friend of mine, because I thought like, oh, you would actually, because you're a Christian. I'm very curious what you think about this film, and to be very clear, like a very like you know accepting of and embracing of the LGBT community Christian,
Mhm.
not like a hardline evangelical, but I showed it to him, and he's kind of like me. He thought the movie itself was solid. I think the performances of Chastain and Andrew Garfield are like the reason to see it. But yeah, no, I just think, and I think one of the reasons why I think that this was the right role for it to give to her. It's amazing when like you go back and watch footage of the real Tammy Faye Baker and you watch her performance and how much she gets, the accent, the mannerisms,
Mhm.
how much the makeup, really made her disappear into that character. And one of the other things I want to say, one of the other things I'm going to add
Yeah,
before
sure.
we get off the subject, uh, is I think the scene that they chose to show at the Oscars. One thing that was really great about that scene, if you watch her take on that interview on the interview and what
Mhm.
they show and sorry the real life footage, she adds a little extra emotion without going overboard, and I think that how she did that was really really cool. And it's an overall solid lineup, but I really do think that she deserved the win. And I know I may not be, not everyone agrees with me. I have a few people I know who agree with me, but a lot of people I know don't, and that's okay. But they respect the fact that, but they do see like why I would have cast my ballot for her that year, and for Zero Dark 32. But that's another story.
Yeah, my vote would have been for someone who wasn't even nominated, Alana Haim. I think she should have easily won in such a, in my opinion, what was kind of a weak category. And if nothing else, I cannot wait to see for Jessica Chastain to win her real Oscar. Uh, but I guess you win the Oscar when you're supposed to. And I've even, I mean, we even talked about this before, even leading up to the Oscars. Even if someone like Bradley Cooper were to hypothetically would have won for Maestro, it's like 9 out of 10 times these actors, writers, and directors don't even win for their best work. Like they clearly don't. They just win for the film that got them, like, that was popular enough. It was almost like a lightning in a bottle kind of thing, where it's like you hit your
Yes.
mark, you get there, you get the audience score, you get the money you make, or you have such a successful campaign for it. Because yeah, as a Tammy Faye was a box office flop. It's like by all accounts, it should not have even made it that far in terms of awards chances or even get its wins it got. But because of the weak category and the fact that the Academy just put its pigeonhole itself in with the lineup that we got, it just kind of landed in that conclusion of like, do we give Olivia Colman, Penelope Cruz, or Nicole Kidman their second wins, or do we just want to let Jessica Chastain in the rain with her first win? And there was no way Kristen Stewart was even going to be close to winning her Oscar. And I'm at least grateful they didn't go that route, because that would have made me furious if Stewart had won. But I can go on and rant about that another time. So that's that.
At
Um,
least you're saying that Chastain was not the worst in the category. So,
She by
and
default she wasn't. So but it's still I don't think she earned the Oscar for that, even though she did fine in the role. She's not terrible, although I do think Garfield is bad in it. And that was like the first role of his that I actually thought was bad. And it's shocking too, because Garfield usually gives a lot of great performances even in films that have been critically panned, like Under the Silver Lake, which I think is what should have been one of two actual Oscar nominations he ended up getting, and not for Tick Tick Boom or Hacksaw Ridge. I like those performances. I'm I'm not really too angry that he got nominated for those, but it's like, guys, there were other better performances out there as a whole in his career. But again, that's a whole other conversation we could have altogether.
of
So as far
course,
as yeah, so as far as Molly's Game itself, outside of the adapted screenplay nomination it got, well, first off, I have to ask, did you think it was worthy of its screenplay nod?
yes, absolutely. I think it's a strong script, um, but also adapted screenplay. The field was very very limited that year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like if you leave it off, like what's the alternative? All the money in the world. I mean, that's That movie is fine, but like I don't know if I would give that movie a screenplay nominee. But I think considering the field that year, I mean Logan's a really good movie.
which I covered
Uh,
on the podcast.
yeah, Disaster Artist was not my favorite, but I at least respected it. I did not like Mudbound, to be honest with you. Um,
Yeah, I hated it too.
Yeah, but I think it's very clear that the film that won, Call Me by Your Name, was just not just because I'm not saying from like what actually happened. I'm talking about in terms of like the actual strengths of the screenplay. It
Yeah.
hands down was the best in the category. Like and but I do think that this was probably the second best screenplay of the lineup, and I think that yes, it was deserving of its nomination.
Well, what I also find interesting is that I put a poll out on Twitter asking around for like what was possibly in second place, even if it was a distant second place. And even though it's a very small vote tally, and I might actually keep doing more and more of this as we go on through the show, it was interesting to hear that Mudbound was considered by some to be like the second, distant second, even though it was a very distant second. Because Call Me by Your Name was going to win the whole way. It won the BAFTA, it won Writers Guild, USC Scripter, Critics' Choice. One fact I don't know if I mentioned this to you off air. The last time, and I was wondering if you can answer this question without looking up. Do you know when the last time a film that would go on to win the adapted screenplay Oscar ended up winning at least one Golden Globe win? So what was the last film to do that?
Was it Sense and Sensibility?
No.
Um,
It could be in any category of the Golden Globes. So like any category, it won at least one Golden Globe award and it went on to win the adapted screenplay Oscar.
I actually don't know.
Moon
I'm trying.
Moonlight was the last film to ever do that. Call Me by Your
Oh,
Name, Black Klansman, Jojo Rabbit, The Father, Coda, Women Talking, and American Fiction. They all won nothing at the Golden Globes, and they went up, and they
oh,
still went on
not
to win the adapted screen. Yeah.
nothing. Sorry, I thought you said something. And like,
Well,
sorry, cut that out. I completely misunderstood the question. I
no, no,
didn't
no,
hear you.
no. No, that's fine. I think I might have. Yeah, you're good because I think the way I worded it was a bit weird. Yeah, so Moonlight was the last film to win something at the Golden Globes, at least one award there, and it went on to win the adapted screenplay Oscar, which I find nuts. Like none of the other films, not even Jojo Rabbit or American Fiction or any of these other films were able to win something at the Globes and go on. It's strange. It's so weird. Yeah, so that was something I came across. I'm like, Call Me by Your Name started this trend. And I'm kind of curious if we're going to continue that for next year's Oscars, but it's April. We got plenty of time. Were there any other categories you would have nominated Molly's Game in outside of adapted screenplay?
I'm going to say no.
Oh,
Um, and I'm gonna say this why. And like people are probably after I said that are probably like, but aren't you the biggest Jessica Chastain fan? It's a great performance. And would she have been a worthy nominee? Absolutely. But that lineup is one of the strongest lead actress lineups, maybe the strongest lead actress lineup of the 21st century.
oh
And
wow.
I can't omit any of them. Even Meryl Streep, who I know people are like, oh, she always gets nominated. Like, how many times do you keep nominating her? The Post is actually, I think, one of her stronger nominations of the 21st century, and I I actually liked her performance more than Chastain's, and so and McDormand, that's another win that I know not everyone loves, but I was all for it the moment I got out of Three Billboards. Sally
Yeah.
Hawkins definitely deserved to get in. Saoirse Ronan deserved to get in. Margot Robbie deserved to get in. And again, like Chastain was, I think, one of those people that like some people thought was like the fifth slot after those four I just mentioned. But Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep, and the Post, still managed to get into Best Picture as after being shut out everywhere else except
Yeah.
for that film and Meryl Streep. But I think Meryl Streep is who deserved that last slot. If there were six, I would have put Chastain in if there were six.
It's
But
funny. Yeah. No, go ahead.
and the last thing I was going to say, Best Picture, in an expanded lineup, sure, but at the same time, uh, they picked those nine very well.
Yeah, I'm trying to even think what number 10 would have been. Maybe Big Sick. I definitely know Logan was not close. And I don't think Mudbound was even close to top 10, despite getting in for, what was it, cinematography, song, adapted screenplay, supporting actress. Like, that was not even close to getting in to number 10. So,
I'm going to say maybe I Tanya.
Tanya, yeah, that would have been another one. Yeah, because it got the WGA and BAFTA nod for screenplay, and it got in PGA. Um, yeah, I
I
still
don't.
find it's you go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I don't think it was gonna be the Florida Project
No,
because Pete Hammond actually mentioned on one of his appearances on Gold Derby was when they were talking about supporting actor, and they were like, "Look, upsets usually happen in supporting," and then like they had to like go through all of them, and like they mentioned like yeah, Defoe's an actor's actor, but Pete said he spoke to a lot of Academy members who really disliked that movie,
yeah,
and yeah, he just said he kept hearing it's like, oh, we hated the Florida Project, and I'll tell you this, my dad hated that movie too when we watched it together. Um, yeah, he that was actually my second time seeing it because I saw it in theaters. I thought, oh well, my parents they like Willem Dafoe, as do I.
yeah,
But when I show that movie, they really didn't like it, and that's one of those movies that like it starts off great, but then it just kind of drags in that last 45 minutes, and it just kind of could have been much better than it actually was.
yeah. Sean Baker, yeah, he is just not an Academy friendly kind of guy. I've only seen one of his films all the way through, which was Red Rocket, which I surprisingly enjoyed. And even I knew, I was like, there's no way the Academy is going to touch Red Rocket. And I'm like, yeah, if they only gave Defoe like the bare minimum nomination of like the supporting actor, then what makes me think Red Rocket's going to do even better? And I was like, yeah, that's never going to happen. I did want to say that, going back to the post though, it's funny that the Academy decided to nominate John Williams for the Oscar for original score, but not for the post. They nominated him for Star Wars, which got like, I don't think it got any kind of major precursor nods because it missed BAFTA, it missed Golden Globes and Critics' Choice, I believe, and it's so funny that that got in. And I think Marcus Dixon from Gold Derby said at the time that like that's how much they hated the post. It's like they would rather nominate John Williams for Star Wars rather than nominate him for the post, which did get a Golden Globe nod, I believe, for original score. So I find that hilarious.
The Post did much better at the Globes than anywhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was clear that it was clear because they had other categories. They can, they, especially when it helps when you split up the comedy, musical and drama categories to, separately. That's why we got separate winners, and why some of us fell, especially for this past year, why most of us, if not half of us, fell for the Lily Gladstone trick, thinking Lily was gonna get it, and then some, like Jack here, thought Emma Stone ended up getting, and always knew that she was gonna win the Oscar. Um, and yeah, that's just something that really, like, the Globes can really trick us up. Even I remember the year before, like when Banshees of Inisherin and Fablemans did extremely well at Golden Globes, like it won both directors prizes. Like Martin McDonagh won screenplay that year, and then Spielberg won director for The Fablemans, and yet they just didn't do much else at the awards that year. Like even Martin McDonagh didn't even win outside of BAFTA. He didn't win much else. Like Critics' Choice got a shutout, and SAG got a shutout for Banshees of Inisherin as well. Which, it's just like, yeah, the Globes the Globes are a pretty good indicator of what may or may not be an awards player, but they're not really
yes.
something to always rely on to say, oh, they won the drama or comedy category, that means it's going to win picture. Because it's just sometimes, even Hopkins, when he won for The Father, like they didn't even give him a Golden Globe win for The Father, and they waited all the way until BAFTA to do that, to say like, oh, you had your fun and games with Chadwick Boseman. Now let's give Hopkins the Oscar for the BAFTA. And by the way, he's our Oscar winner. Sorry, Boseman. Um, So I find that very interesting and fascinating, just like many years. Yeah, I'm trying to even think if there's any other categories I would have nominated. Yeah, just the adapted screenplay would have been one for me. I would have just been like, that's it. And real quickly, going back to Call Me by Your Name, I do agree with you. That was a deserved winner for sure. It was awesome to see James Ivory finally win his Academy Award. He had been nominated three times before for The Remains of the Day, Howard's End, and A Room with a View. And it was nice to see him come back to the fold. And if that's how he's going to win his Oscar, then that's fine by me. And that might be, I think that was like the first time I started thinking to myself, you know what? This Timothée Chalamet kid's actually a pretty good actor, and it might be one of the few roles that he's pretty good in. And I'm starting to notice too. We'll see if the streak breaks when his next film he's doing with Mangold right now in the Bob Dylan biopic.
A complete
I'm curious.
unknown.
Yeah, well, that's the title of it for now. It might change, but I'm curious to know if that's going to continue the trend or break the trend of I'm only ever impressed by Chalamet as an actor when he's working with non-English international directors.
Right.
Because it's like, Call Me by Your Name and the two Dune movies are the only three where it's like, okay, he's actually pretty good in both of them, or his skills are utilized the best in those movies. And there's other stuff like Lady Bird I didn't think he was that great in, and same goes with Little Women. I thought he was just it was fine. But yeah, and to this day, James Ivory is still the oldest nominee / winner of the adapted screenplay category. So that was cool.
Right.
And then yeah, I'll talk about the Disaster Artist down the road, and explore what happened there, because that is such a fascinating tale of like how the fuck did they, like, what happened there with James Franco, especially with like not just the whole story going on, but the fact that like some of us like me thought he was gonna get in for that fifth spot, but then they went with Roman J. Israel Esquire, and yeah. Again, we could talk like forever about this. And unfortunately we won't. So the only kind of final thoughts I have to say is, yeah, just the adapted screenplay Oscar nod for Molly's Game I would have said yes to. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then yeah, just overall I'm glad that it got the screenplay nod again. It did. And good adapted screenplay lineup, even if it was a pretty weak year outside of Mudbound maybe, which I've only seen once and I just did not care for that movie, period. I know there's a lot of my colleagues at school who were so blown away by it, and I'm just like, I just didn't get it. But anywho, um, so yeah, that's pretty much it for our show. Unless you had any final thoughts on the awards stuff going on for this movie, for
No, I
Molly's
think
Game.
I think we touched on everything.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you again for dedicating your time to be here on the show. Before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to plug in, or where our listeners can follow you along after the episode's done?
Absolutely. And I just realized I forgot to ask if I to answer your question if I've been on other podcasts. Yes, I am often on Jeffrey Care's podcast to for final Oscar predictions, final Emmy predictions, and I come on again to like recap the show and the winners. I've been doing that since the recap episode he did of the Oscars where Nomadland won Best Picture. Um, but that's mostly been my podcast appearances. I've made 3 appearances on Gold Derby because I'm a freelance writer for them. I've appeared on 3 Slugfests. 2 of them were part of the Everything Ever All at Once season. One was part of the Oppenheimer season. So, and then I've written articles for them. I think I have about 7 published to date. Yes, 7. And on social media, you can find me on Twitter. It's just under my name, Jack Mahanes. Instagram, Facebook. I'm also a musician. I have material on, all the streaming platforms, and yeah, that's pretty much everything there is to know about me.
One other thing I do want to give a quick shout out to, if you haven't already, I'll see if I can try to find a link to it. But I also have to say it was great that you were able to write up that article for Anatomy of a Fall. on the possibility of that potentially winning screenplay, like right even before BAFTA even called it and said, "Yeah, this is our award winner for original screenplay." Because yeah, God, that was great. Our discussion we had on that because we're like, I'm pretty because we both were like after Globes, we're like, I think this is gonna win the original screenplay category, and you even asked me like for like some pointers or like what's some what are some things I could add in for the article, so to speak. And I'm like, yeah, add it, this, any more you need, just let me know. And yeah, so if you get a chance, I would highly recommend reading that, even though that season's already been done. But it's if nothing else, it's after reading that article, it definitely opened my eyes into what particularly the original screenplay category typically goes with every once in a while, especially when it comes to like films that are filled with suspense and are very talkative conversation starters, so to speak, especially with the themes and ideas that said films are doing. So thanks again for writing that article for Gold Derby.
Absolutely, I did think it was so funny, because there for me, there's sometimes I like want to check in, making sure like the obvious are like really obvious. Like, is there any way that something like that, like there's still room for something else, just so we're not getting like too comfortable. I go through that before getting like officially comfortable and settled in, like the I think the 2 or 3 days leading up to the Oscar ceremony. But I remember when I said like some people are still discussing holdovers. Not that I would ever switch to it, but like, is it a lot? But you're like, and you said, I refuse to let you overthink this category. And I
Yeah,
like the way you said that, I kind of was thinking back to that scene in Dude, Where's My Car?
yeah,
Where they're ordering at the Chinese takeout. And then like, and the lady's just like, and Ashton Kutcher goes, I refuse to play your Chinese mind game. So as soon as you said that, like, that's how I heard it in my head. And I was like, I just had a laugh. It's like, okay, yeah, no. They're like, this is winning. This is the major win that Anatomy of Fall is going to get.
yeah. And there were other factors going into it, but again, it was like the only one that made sense to me, at least, because it's like for the other films to win, they would have had to have pulled some kind of win, even at BAFTA. And even then, even if something like Past Lives Are Holdovers just won BAFTA, I'm like, I do not trust you guys because you did not. It's like it's really rare for a film to win just BAFTA in the original screenplay category and win the Oscar. Um,
Uh, wasn't Talk to Her the last film to do that?
that was the last one, and I fell for that trap twice with Licorice Pizza and The Favorite.
Uh,
And
Same here for
yeah,
both of
and
them.
I'm like, I'm never doing that ever again. Even if I'm gonna be proven wrong, I have to see it through. So anywho, so yeah, like I said, thanks again for having you on the. Thanks again for being on my show. You can follow me and the show through Linktree under @Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts such as Twitter and Letterboxd. On the same site, I provided the link for where you could listen to more episodes of the show. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.